surgery had worked. That was the first surprise. The second was that Dr. Arden Vale had been right. Not about the mesh, about everything that would come afterward. 3 days before the family left the Vale Foundation, Dr. Vale had made a recommendation. It was not medical. The surgery was over. The integration was stable. Recovery was proceeding faster than any of her models had predicted. No. Her warning concerned the world outside. She advised immediate relocation, a specialized educational environment, continuous observation, protection from public exposure, protection from institutions, protection from attention itself. She explained it calmly, the way physicists explain gravity, not as opinion, as consequence. If the integration continues at this rate, she told them, ordinary schooling will not remain neutral. Eva's father disagreed immediately. His daughter had already lost enough. Months of decline, months of hospitals, months of fear, months of being treated like a problem. Now she was recovering. She deserved normal. Friends, playgrounds, classrooms, birthday parties. The ordinary life that had been taken from her. Her mother agreed. Perhaps not because she believed Dr. Vale was wrong, but because she desperately wanted her to be wrong. The foundation had another proposal. A place in Norway. A private educational sanctuary. Remote, protected, quiet. Dr. Vale recommended relocation before the world had time to notice what Eva was becoming. The family declined. Politely, firmly. They thanked the foundation. They returned home. And for a few precious weeks, it seemed they had made the right choice. The neighborhood looked the same. The house looked the same. The world looked the same. 3 weeks later, Eva returned to school. The same building, the same classroom, the same fluorescent lights humming softly above rows of desks, the same children, the same teachers. Only one thing had changed. Eva. At first, nobody noticed. Why would they? The mesh was invisible. No glowing eyes, no strange devices, no wires beneath the skin. No visible evidence that one of the most advanced cognitive procedures ever attempted had taken place inside the head of a child. She carried the same backpack, wore the same shoes, sat in the same seat near the window. The world expected her to be the same girl who had left. The world was wrong. The first lesson began with multiplication. The teacher wrote a problem across the board. 24 times 17. Before the chalk reached the final digit, Eva already knew the answer. 408. Not because she had memorized it. The answer arrived the way recognition arrives when someone suddenly realizes a face belongs to an old friend. Natural, effortless, immediate. She raised her hand. The teacher called on her. 408. The room became quiet. The teacher blinked, then smiled politely. Can you show your work? Eva hesitated. That question had become strangely difficult since the surgery. The answer was obvious. The path was not. The mesh did not provide solutions. It provided structure, relationships, patterns, the spaces between ideas. To Eva, the multiplication problem did not appear as separate numbers requiring deliberate calculation. It appeared as a shape, a structure, a pattern that unfolded into its conclusion almost instantly. Trying to explain how she knew felt like being asked to explain how she recognized her mother's face. She simply did. The teacher mistook her hesitation for uncertainty. Let's work through it together. The class proceeded step by step. By the time everyone else arrived at the answer, Eva had already moved on. Not consciously, automatically. Her attention drifted toward the geometry worksheet waiting on the corner of her desk. Then toward the map hanging beside the door. Then toward a question she had overheard 2 students discussing before class. 3 unrelated things, yet somehow connected. The mesh seemed to enjoy connections. That was becoming obvious. Every day the world looked slightly more organized than before. Every lesson generated new pathways. Every observation linked itself to dozens of others. Not overwhelming, not intrusive, simply present. Like discovering that reality contained invisible threads and suddenly becoming able to see them. But something else was happening too. At first, Eva thought she was imagining it. Questions no longer seemed to stay where she left them. A thought from breakfast might somehow return at lunch. A puzzle from mathematics would unexpectedly connect itself to something hanging on a classroom wall. A conversation overheard in the hallway would suddenly become useful hours later. Again and again, the world seemed unusually cooperative, not answering, not helping, only nudging, as though reality had become slightly better at leaving clues. The feeling was difficult to describe. It reminded her of walking through a forest and slowly realizing that all the birds were singing the same song. Not because they had planned it, because they were connected by something larger than themselves. The meshed cortex seemed fascinated by such moments. Whenever they happened, her attention sharpened automatically. Patterns accumulated, relationships emerged. The spaces between things became easier to notice. And sometimes, only for a second, Eva had the strange feeling that the world was listening too. At lunch she remembered something strange. A page from a book she had read years earlier. Not the words, the relationships, the argument, the structure of the ideas. She could reconstruct it almost perfectly. The memory did not feel retrieved. It felt rebuilt. That frightened her. Not because it hurt, because it felt normal. As if her mind had always been capable of this, and only recently remembered how. For 2 weeks, nobody said anything. Then the tests arrived. Mathematics, perfect. Science, perfect. History, perfect. Language, perfect. Not once. Repeatedly. Across subjects. Across weeks. Across every form of evaluation the school could produce. At first the teachers congratulated her. Then they became curious. Then they became suspicious. And suspicion spreads through institutions faster than wonder. The first accusation came from another child. It happened during a history lesson. The class had been discussing a treaty signed more than a century earlier. The teacher asked a question. Eva answered. Then she explained the economic consequences. Then the political consequences. Then the diplomatic implications. The room stared. One boy laughed. Another shook his head. Finally, a girl near the back said what everyone else was already thinking. She's cheating. The class erupted. A few children laughed. Others immediately began talking. The teacher tried to restore order. Under ordinary circumstances, the accusation might have hurt. Months earlier, it certainly would have. The old Eva would have felt embarrassment first, confusion second, analysis last. Now something different happened. The moment the word left the girl's mouth, Eva's mind began constructing explanations. The accusation was not random. 3 students had performed poorly on the previous test. The teacher had praised Eva twice that morning. The classroom's social hierarchy had shifted. The accusation reduced uncertainty. It restored balance. By the time the emotional meaning arrived, the structural meaning had already formed. That frightened her more than the accusation itself. Not because she felt nothing, because she still did. The hurt came, just later, as if emotion now had to wait its turn behind understanding. For the first time since the surgery, Eva remembered something Dr. Vale had said during recovery. The mesh may alter sequencing. At the time, Eva had not understood. Now she wondered if this was what the doctor meant. Not less feeling, different timing, different order, and perhaps something else. The realization passed quickly. The lesson continued. But later that evening, lying awake in bed, Eva discovered she could still hear the word, cheater. Only now it no longer felt like an insult. It felt like data. And that disturbed her far more than being called one. Cheating. A simple explanation. A comfortable explanation. Much easier than considering the alternative. Because if Eva was not cheating, then something else was happening. And that possibility was far more disturbing. The principal requested a meeting. Then another. Then another. Questions multiplied. What software was she using? What tutoring had she received? What educational support existed at home? Did she have access to unauthorized materials? Was she using artificial intelligence? The irony would have been funny if it had not become dangerous. Because for the first time, adults were asking the correct question, just not in the correct way. They sensed the presence of something new. They simply lacked the vocabulary to describe it. The school had misunderstood Eva when she was declining. Now it struggled to understand her recovery. Different problem, same institution. And outside the school walls, attention was beginning to gather. The first journalist called 3 days later. The first government inquiry arrived 1 week after that. The first lawsuit appeared before the end of the month. The family had believed the surgery was the end of the story. In reality, it had only been the beginning.
Because Eva had returned as proof of something no classroom was prepared to face. A child's mind was no longer limited to biology, training, or age. It could be augmented, and that changed everything. Because an AI-augmented mind does not merely outperform the system, it exposes the system, its classrooms, its exams, its hierarchies, its definition of fairness. Eva was no longer simply a child who had been saved. She had become a contradiction walking back into a world that still depended on human limits remaining fixed. And once that contradiction entered the classroom was no longer only a place of learning. It became the first battlefield. Part 2. When intelligence became a political problem,